When love stopped breathing. Lena Hart's existence was as near to a fantasy as real life could get, but everything changed in an instant. She is overjoyed to be pregnant and wants to tell her husband, Kellen, the news, but instead he betrays her, accuses her, and breaks her heart. Fake pictures, bad manipulation, and Kellen's growing skepticism put her in a whirlwind of pain that costs her kid and almost her life. Lena leaves the world she once called home with just heartache and questions. But in the depths of her misery, she finds unexpected comfort in a guy named Damien, who becomes her anchor and quiet hope. But when fate brings Ryan back into Lena's life, her childhood buddy, who is now a suspected traitor, Lena has to deal with the ghosts of her past. As secrets come out and the truth comes to light, Lena has to decide whether to stay buried in the pain of the past or find the strength to rise, heal, and rewrite her tale. Episode 1. Lena had heard that dreaming about flowers meant that the goddess of fertility, Hera, was sending her favors. But that was based on old stories. Christian folklore, on the other hand, linked it to Eve's weeping. It's interesting that ancient Romans would put a flower in the hands of the dead as they were buried. Last night, it was hard to tell what her dream of being surrounded by very white flowers signified. Or maybe it was just the fact that it was her favorite flower. That should be enough of a cause for her to dream about it. But only a few hours later, when she went to see the gynecologist for her bi-monthly checkup, she got the news that she wasn't really ready for it. What the doctor told her was unexpected, but it made her heart feel like it would never stop being happy. It hit her with the same energy as a comet. "Congratulations, Mrs. Hart. You're 1 week along." It wasn't like she was dead before, but this seemed to make her feel more alive than ever. She checked the time on her watch. It was still a few hours before Kellen would be home. She chose to go to her favorite place, the cherry blossom tree beside the historic Ivory Grove Sanctuary in the middle of downtown Brooklyn. "Thanks, Jason," she said as she stepped out of the bright blue town car. She smiled at Kellen's head of security, who had been assigned to her after they got married. Kellen took several actions that appeared needless to her as he became more and more protective of her. But to preserve his heart, she didn't complain enough. She was astonished for the second time that day when she got closer to the tree. There were several buds on the cherry blossom tree that were poking out from between the leaves and looking up at the sky. It was amazing since many in the area claimed the tree couldn't have kids. No one has seen any blooms on it in a long time. But soon, the cherry blossoms would bloom. Lena remained there for a moment, staring up at the tree with wide eyes and a mouth open in surprise. She believed that maybe the tree had gotten close to her since she had sat on the tree ring so many times. A grin spread over her lips. The mole on her forehead showed up when her fringe shook in the gentle wind. This was one of her physical qualities that Kellen never got weary of saying how much he liked. She sat down on the stone ring around the tree, just like she had done many times before. She took out her notepad, which was more than half full of the narrative she had been writing for a long time. The plot constantly followed the beat of her heart, which was primarily based on how she felt. But she couldn't write a thing tonight. She leaned back against the tree bark and held the notebook open on her lap, staring at the blank pages. Tears were running down her cheeks, even though she was smiling. Her tears soaked the blank sheet. The painfully exquisite pain in her heart made its way into her notebook. Lena could hardly wait to go home as the sun started to set. She was in the back seat of the car and felt like she was going to burst with happiness. She realized that the experience of having another soul inside her body was too strong to be conveyed with words. And she wanted nothing more than to tell Kellen about this. She walked quicker when she saw Kellen's car already parked in the driveway. Her long, wavy hair bounced over her shoulders. She stopped at the front doors for only a second and held the test reports securely to her chest. The article verified that she was going to be a mother and that she was expecting their first child. She and Kellen were going to have a baby very soon. She remembered how Kellen used to exclaim how lucky they were to have gotten all they wanted without much trouble and with the help of fate. At first, they despised each other when Lena first started working for Zerakerp, Kellen's firm. But after a chance encounter on the balcony, a kiss in the dark, and getting to know one another quickly, any bad sentiments they had for each other went away. They wed shortly after. Their relationship was so good that they never had to deal with more than small disputes, and even those were rare. They had been married for about 6 months, and others who knew that they didn't fight much were either jealous or didn't believe them. She had always thought she was lucky that her happy ending came to her so easily. And now, to that beautiful life, a kid would be added, which would make it even better. Their kid. Lena smiled to herself and brushed away a warm tear that had just slipped out from behind her eye. She couldn't help but run up the stairs since she was so excited. The brief trip upstairs seemed like it took too long. She knew that when she told Kellen the wonderful news, which would begin a new era in their lives, he would have the same look of enthusiasm in his eyes. She was very excited. Lena stopped in front of their bedroom door with her pulse racing and pounding. She paused for a while, then opened the door, which produced the same screaming noise she had been used to hearing. She hurried in. Kellen's towering body was standing at the window with his back to her. "Kellen!" Lena cried out, her voice full of excitement and a grin on her face. The air in the room was tight for some reason, so much so that it felt like it was about to suffocate me. Even though the open window let in a fresh breeze, the leaves on the familiar oak branch outside shook in time with the draperies. She moved closer and saw that his wide shoulders were firmer than normal. He stood up straight, which made his already tall figure look even taller in a scary way. His arms were as stiff as the rest of his body, and the corded muscles on his arms were always on display since his shirt sleeves were carelessly pulled up to his elbows. Kellen turned around slowly, and Lena stopped halfway through. Something seemed very, very wrong. His eyes were full of rage. His face looked crazy. Lena, on the other hand, opted to disregard all of it. She was going to tell everyone the fantastic news that would put everything that had gone wrong right. She moved up to him, feeling a bit frightened now. "Kellen," she went on to say anyhow. "I have something amazing to tell you, why?" But she cut her off. "Why did you do this to me, Lena? Why?" Her forehead was disfigured by a look of confusion. "I don't get what you're saying." Kellen shook his head and said, "No, Lena. I'm the one who doesn't get it." The skin around his eyes was getting redder and redder as his anger and what seemed like hurt grew. "Tell me, Lena, what was less in my love? Why did you do this to me? I've been kept in the dark this whole time." Her perplexity grew as she looked into his eyes, which were filled with raw anger, and his face, which was serious and definitive. "I really don't know what I've done, Kellen," she said. "Tell me." "This." He threw several pictures at her. Lena snatched her face back as some of the photographs hit her cheek because she was upset by Kellen's behavior. They crept down through the air and eventually settled around her feet. He turned away from her as if she had hurt him. And Lena couldn't help but feel her insides shake. Her instincts told her that a storm had come into her life with the goal of hurting the love she and Kellen had. She bent down cautiously and reached out with shaking hands. When she picked up one of the pictures off the floor, she froze. Ryan, her best buddy, and she were kissing in the picture. Lena recalled this moment, but it wasn't like this at all. The images were all expertly taken from the wrong angles, and some of them were definitely altered. But they were done so well that even Lena thought they were real. Lena glanced up from the picture where she and Ryan were kissing and back into Kellen's eyes. She was terrified out of her wits. The eyes that used to be full of love and affection for her were now full of hate. And she realized that the love they used to brag about and the ideal connection they had would have to go through a test. At that moment, they were supposed to flunk the test. It's like believing a dream of yours is real when you don't appreciate the good things in your life. You wake up one day and find out that it was all a dream. When the lovely dream breaks into pieces, you feel like you're drowning in nothingness. At some point, even the sadness that comes with that emptiness stops hurting. And your lovely past turns into a series of blurry memories that are far away. Kellen, trust me. Lena was horrified and peered into Kellen's eyes. She looked for a little bit of faith in them, but there wasn't any. You want me to trust you after all this? Kellen said, pointing to the pictures on the floor. They poisoned his heart, breaking all the vows he had ever made to her and taking away the love they thought was stronger than anything else in the world. Lena thought she would die from the sadness she felt within. It was hard to believe that this day had come when he would accuse her of anything like that. She cried tears of pain and shock as she realized what was happening. She had never believed he would question her commitment to him or embarrass her like this in her darkest fantasies. But she loved him with all her heart and had to make him see the truth since it was evident that someone was trying to ruin their marriage. Kellen, she started, but the intense anger she saw in his blue eyes, the eyes she had fallen in love with, made her take a sudden, painful breath. He made a low groan. "Don't you dare say my name with that dirty mouth of yours." His eyes were full of fury. He was breathing heavily and said, "I hate you, Lena. You make me sick. Tell me how long this has been going on. Ryan was in my house last week, right? Were you in our bed too? Tell me. What are you even thinking? How can you say," she said, but the words became stuck in her throat. Her voice shook, and her hands shook. "I never cheated on you, Kellen. Please believe me," she begged. But Kellen didn't want to hear anything. "So, it's all a lie, right?" He said it in a contemptuous way. "Of course it is. Can't you see that someone is trying to break us up and frame me? But who knew this trap had more to it?" She frowned as she saw Kellen push the screen of his right in front of her face. His hands were shaking a bit. "And this?" he asked. "Is this a lie, too? Say you didn't meet this jerk." Lena stared. Someone had gone ahead and supplied pictures of her meeting Derek Holt, Kellen's cousin, who wasn't on good terms with the family. Derek was also Kellen's biggest business opponent. The guy had attempted to be mean and get Lena to assist him in killing Kellen by offering her different things. Kellen asked, "Did you meet him or not?" She cleaned her cheeks, and a dull pain started in her brain. She had no motive to lie because she had turned down all of Derek's offers, so she said, "He came up to me to have you steal the secret shareholders file of my company, right?" He cut in. He saw the shock on her face and laughed bitterly and regretfully. "I never betrayed you," she added, this time with a lot of confidence. "But it didn't help, but that file has been missing for a week now," he said. "And someone has been giving Zerakorp's shareholders great deals to buy them out. Isn't that interesting?" His voice broke at the end as he looked away from her as if the sight of her hurt him. "I thought you would be different. I really thought that. With all the people around me betraying each other and me, I thought you would be my only light. But I was wrong." Her lips shook. Could she say or do anything to show that she was innocent of all the charges he was making against her? When someone has already made up their mind, you can't change it. He was so far past the point of hearing Lena's urgent cries, seeing the truth in her eyes, and trusting the love they shared that nothing could penetrate his heart anymore. Lena could see it. He was so angry and hurt by being betrayed that he couldn't think straight. The love he had for Lena turned into never-ending anger. Lena looked down at the medical paperwork she was holding. She felt too helpless and too startled to do anything. Kellen's fiery stare followed Lena's eyes, and that's when he noticed the file she was holding. He took it before she could even say anything. Lena saw him go through the paperwork, and his jaw tightened with rage. She still had a little hope in her heart, but her head was now shouting that the things that were broken would never be fixed. It was a hurricane that wouldn't stop until everything was devastated. Kellen's face twisted in wrath that no one could imagine, and he yelled at the broken soul that stood like a statue in front of him. "So, who is the father?" he said with a sharp tone. "Ryan or Derek?" Her stomach dropped. And that was a natural thing to do. Her hand went up to slap his face hard. But she gasped as he moved quickly. He grabbed her by the arms in a heartbeat, and his hold hurt so much that she moaned in anguish until it was too much for her to handle. "I want nothing more than for you to leave my life right now. Take the bastard inside you away from me," he growled down at her. "It hurts to look at your face anymore. It hurts to be near you anymore. You disgust me, Lena, you and every memory I have of you." He let go of her and pushed himself away from her body, and she staggered back. She could feel the edge of the bed strike the back of her knees. She sat back down on the mattress since she didn't have any more energy in her legs. He gave her one final angry glance before storming out the door. She fell into the bed, curled herself into a ball, and felt tears of pain pouring down her face. She held onto the blankets with shaking fists as if she was struggling to keep her sanity. It was too much for her to handle as her whole life fell apart in an instant. Her head hurt a lot, but her heart hurt the most. She never realized that a shattered heart could hurt so badly that it seemed like someone had stabbed her in the chest. It was too much to endure. No one should have to go through that, yet there she was, feeling it all. She clutched herself with both hands over her tummy to protect herself. She thought she was out of tears, but then she recalled what Kellen had said about their kid. Was his love so feeble that a few pictures could make it go away? How could he say that his own child was a bastard? Was this the Kellen she loved? Was this Kellen the same person she married? Lena sat up on the bed and wiped her tears away hard. Her crying had stopped, and she was now hiccuping. No, no more in this house, she thought. His desire would come true. She was determined, and her eyes hardened. Her shaking hand rested on her stomach, where her kid was. He doesn't have a child anymore. It's exclusively hers. Lena packed her things right away. Their bloodshot eyes went across the room, taking in the bed, the photographs of them on the wall, and the sofa next to the balcony doors. Every single item reminded them of her and him. She had to remain and make him believe in her since she loved him so much, but it wasn't just her who was offended today. He also insulted her child in the worst way imaginable. When Lena stepped out of the home with a bag in her hand, the huge, booming thunders made it sound like the sky was cracking apart. It was raining all the time, and it looked like the sky was sobbing with her. She remembered that one night last week when it was pouring precisely like this. She had always liked the rain. She enjoyed how those small drops of good luck fell from the sky and hit the ground. She loved getting wet in the rain, so that's what she did that night. Kellen was so scared that she might get sick that he brought her inside and took care of her until she was almost crying. But suddenly, everything was different. Her spouse, the man she loved, had turned into a vengeful creature blinded by doubt. Those pictures were definitely proof of someone's evil plans and scheme. But this test of fate showed that his love and confidence in her were weak. The gate to the home that was no longer hers was the final thing that stood in her way to endless agony. Lena pulled it open and stepped into that eternity without Kellen. The rain concealed her tears, but the sorrow in her eyes was clear as thunder rumbled in the sky. Jason ran up and said, "Can I drop you?" He looked unhappy, which meant he knew what was going on. Kellen didn't lower his voice. She had a bag in her hand, and her face was red and puffy from crying. Of course, everyone could see the evidence of new damage. "No need, Jason," she answered gently, turning away. "I don't think he would like that." Jason worked for Kellen, after all. Jason regrettably stepped back. She called a taxi and got in the back seat, clutching her handbag tightly. Inside were the pictures that would destroy her. There was one final thing to do. When fate is against you, nothing will go right. Every second that goes by makes the task harder. At some point in life, dying feels more important than anything else. But even death won't help when you need it the most. Being alive is the worst penalty, no matter what you did. Ryan used to live next door to Lena before she married Kellen and moved in with her parents. They had been buddies since they were kids and grew up to be best friends. Ryan helped her get out of the deep hole of sadness when she lost her parents in a car accident. She didn't know where she would have been if Ryan hadn't been there for her through the stress, sadness, and melancholy of losing both of her parents at once. Ryan was the one buddy who never gave up on her. A lot of their other schoolmates thought they should take their friendship to the next level, but Ryan and Lena thought it was dumb. They were more like family than friends. It was strange that the same old, foolish concept of romanticism between them suddenly made her spouse lose trust and ruined her marriage. Lena took the pictures and headed to Ryan's house with a small glimmer of hope lingering in her heart. Lena thought Ryan would be there for her throughout this difficulty, just like he had been when her parents died. It was possible that her relationship with Kellen would never be the same again. She might never be able to forgive him. But this dirty claim that she is an unfaithful wife could still be able to be taken back. She thought she could establish that this wickedness and humiliation were not hers. She didn't realize that this cursed night still had more in store for her. She slid her fingers through the little crevice between a flower pot and the wall outside the door and pulled out the extra key. But a few minutes later, she was standing in the doorway to Ryan's study room like a statue. She could see Ryan's back. He had shoulder-length hair put up in a macho bun, an ear pierced, and was wearing a loose t-shirt and tattered jeans. As he chatted on the phone, she could hear his loud laughing. His voice and words seemed strange to her. "Yes, Jude. Well done." The trace of a grin in his tone raised. "I'm glad you did everything right." Lena must be in shock right now. "And Kellen, he's always been so jealous of me." Ryan laughed so hard that he threw his head back and said, "He must be burning right now, wondering how I could do all that he had the right to." He trailed off as the person on the other end probably said something, and Ryan paused for a second to nod, even though the person he was talking to couldn't see him. "That's true, I can do anything for her." "Kellen, be damned, that guy always behaves like a possessive pest anyway." The photos were truly a brilliant idea. Lena fell back because of the smack of treachery. The cursed pictures fell from her hands as they loosened. It was funny that she was still standing because it seemed like she had no more strength left in her body. How could she have never noticed this before? What made Ryan sink to this level? Was the person behind the mask she had been counting on for support and companionship the whole time an enemy? She let out a nervous breath. Her shaky steps moved back. After getting her bag from the front door where she had left it earlier, Lena staggered out onto the street. She had a headache from being confused and in discomfort. It was hard to believe how her wonderful, happy life had changed course and was now heading down a road of only disaster and suffering. In the end, the people who were the most important to her smashed her to the ground and into a bed of nails. Lena thought the anguish would never stop. She didn't know whether she would ever be able to get up again. Ryan called Lena after chatting to Jude, a salesperson at Zerakerp, Kellen's firm, and Lena and her good buddy. The smile was still on his lips. The person was strange and humorous, yet he was useful for both big and small things. Ryan swore and rolled his eyes when Lena's voice told him to leave a message for the 11th time. He said under his breath, "Pick it up, Lena. There's no way I'm going to let Kellen wish you a happy birthday before me. Jude and I have it all planned." But then he grinned because he thought that the flowers and cake he had just given to her house could have already reached her. The collage of images that Jude was in charge of getting from the studio, which featured all of their high school memories, pictures of Lena's parents, and pictures from their prom night, were guaranteed to make Lena the happiest. So Kellen could go and dig a hole for himself. Ryan laughed. He always liked to make fun of Kellen. That stubborn bull would always get jealous and angry first, and then he would give Lena all of his attention. It was funny and sweet. Ryan was still attempting to get in touch with Lena as he left the study. But when he got to the door, he stumbled and stopped when his foot hit something that had been carelessly thrown on the floor. He grimaced and looked away from the phone screen. There were a lot of images that appeared like they were spread face down. Ryan looked around to check whether a maid or someone else was in charge of things, but he couldn't find anyone. He bent down to pick one up and was halfway through turning it over to look at it when he saw his very old and sleepy maid Agnes go by out of the corner of his eye. Ryan's heart raced as surprise, horror, and uncertainty raced through his thoughts as he snapped his face up. He thought his eyes had actually burnt from seeing the picture of him and Lena kissing. There were also pictures of Lena with another guy, conversing in a restaurant or standing on the side of the road. Ryan remembered that it was Derek. What did all of them mean? Did someone come inside his house? He ran to the front door and saw that it was open. Someone was definitely here. He saw that the tub where he normally kept his extra key was a little out of position as he walked outside. He frowned. He thought he had merely shown Lena the backup key. Was she here? Without wasting any time, he went out onto the street and looked far to the left and right. But she wasn't there. He had the cursed pictures in one hand, which he had picked up in anger, and he was dialing Lena's phone with the other hand. This time, though, it wasn't to wish her a happy birthday. Someone, somewhere, was quite happy at that moment. Her laughing boomed throughout the room, and her joy was well masked behind the walls as she tipped her head back and drank some champagne. She stooped over and peered closely at the chessboard, and her long hair swung. With thin, well-groomed fingertips, she brutally swept the queen off the board and then, very carefully, grasped the king. She smiled lazily before kissing the king on the lips. "Now, Kellen," a voice like honey said, "you're mine." There was no cab in sight, but even if there had been, nothing would have changed for Lena. In short, she had no other place to go, at least not for the night. It was too far to walk to even the motels. After she got married, the few friends she still talked to reside outside of the city. Lena didn't know what time it was or where she was going. Her existence had no purpose, it was the work of fate, and treachery and distrust had already set her on the path to death. Her heart hurt so much that it felt like the night sky was hazy. It had stopped raining a time ago. Her clothing was partially dry from the rain that had fallen earlier. The chilly wind on her skin, which was a little moist, would have made her tremble in pain, but at some point, she stopped feeling anything. Lena didn't see anything around her. She merely walked with the luggage behind her, holding it loosely with her hand. The kid in her belly was still someone she could go forward for. She knew she had to stay alive for the baby to develop inside her. That was her only hope, the one light in her dark world, and she was going to cling to it with all her strength. People needed a reason to live, and Lena didn't have many left. A street light behind her made a creepy shadow of her on the street at night. Two men suddenly came out of a dark alley, staggering. Lena was startled as she heard their abrupt, slurry shouts. It was clear that the hooligans were drunk. To their lusty gaze, she was just a piece of meat that chance had thrown in their way. Lena didn't realize she was in trouble until they lurched close to her and fell over each other when they came to a stop and stared at her. She was afraid as she took a few steps back. When she turned around to escape, someone grabbed her wrist hard. Lena shrieked at the man and tried to break away. The other man was going to jump on her, but at the last second, she pulled her hand free with all her effort. The man holding her wrist reeled forward from the rapid pull. She pushed the suitcase in front of her, making a quick barrier that the other man fell over. It was a good thing they were drunk, their motions were already shaky enough. Lena dashed across the street without wasting a second. She didn't want to take a chance and see how long she could resist those idiots. She kept looking over her shoulder to see if they were following her when she turned her head back. It was funny how harsh and unfair fate can be at times. Lena didn't see the automobile speeding down the street. She heard the insane screeches of tires and saw spotlights coming at her from the corner of her eye. It all occurred so quickly that the automobile impacted the front of her body with a lot of force before she could even turn to face it or try to get out of the way. Suddenly, she was rolling, with her body hanging in the air for a second before hitting the cold, hard pavement. The impact was so strong that it shook her bones. She heard the screeching of tires backing away from her and a pair of footfalls running away into the distance, but that was it. The ringing in her ears drowned out all other sounds. As the spotlights swiftly faded away, her peripheral vision hurt. It seemed like no one wanted to go into trouble. She started to feel like something was tearing apart within her tummy, and it made her moan in pain. The pain didn't stop, and it didn't slow down, it only became worse and worse, stabbing, twisting, and ripping her whole body apart. Her hands were trembling, but she was able to reach her tummy and hold the skin where her kid was lying. She prayed her kid would remain, even if it seemed impossible. She was so sleepy that she thought of a lullaby. Maybe if she sang to her baby, it would settle down. But she couldn't, her voice could only let out whimpers of anguish that raced through her whole lower abdomen. It was like getting stabbed over and over again without mercy. Kellen, Lena said as her vision started to fade. Please, our baby. She begged over and over again, but no one listened. She had never felt so powerless before. It was hard for her to breathe, her heartbeats were erratic, and her mouth was dry. He had told her that he would always protect her and that pain would never come near her. He was very eager to make her happy beyond her wildest dreams. He had stated everything in his lovely, deep voice, even the vows he made at his wedding. What happened to all of that? He forgot so much. Her final feeble wail resonated across the lonely streets of the night until it disappeared. The final light went out, and she was in complete darkness. There was a lot of blood around a body that was lying motionless by the side of the road. The dawning dawn was just something that happened every day. It gently crept up and stretched across the surface of the world at a dull pace. But it couldn't do anything about the gloom that stayed eternally. A few cars drove by, but none of them stopped, not even when they saw blood and death. They cared, but they had other things that were more essential to accomplish. The world is always busy and doesn't stop spinning for drama that isn't needed. An automobile ceased making noise on the empty road. A man in his mid-20s quickly got out of the automobile. He knelt down next to Lena's bleeding body with a deep frown of astonishment and fear. He didn't waste any time checking her pulse and sighed when he saw that she was still alive. But he worried how long she would be like this. She was hardly breathing and had probably lost a lot of blood. The sea of scarlet that enveloped her hurt body made his mind spin a little. He quickly took out his phone and called for an ambulance. While reaching down and whispering in her ear in a calm but panicked voice, "Hold on there, I've got you," he told her to hold on. Kellen got home the next day at about noon, and as soon as he entered the front door, his frightened mother ran up to him. Kellen didn't want to talk to anyone right now, he simply wanted to be by himself. He was so hurt by the betrayal of the lady he loved the most that he was afraid he would cry if he tried to talk. But his mother, who was always there for him, Celeste, followed him up the stairs even though he was dragging his feet. "Please just tell me what's going on, Kellen," Celeste begged. "What did your security tell me? Lino left with a suitcase last night, and you were out all night, too. What is going on?" As soon as Lena's name was said, hatred boiled through every vein in his body. Kellen turned to look at Celeste. "She's been cheating on me," he said, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. "That's what has been going on right under my nose the whole time." Celeste couldn't believe what she heard. Kellen was her only son, and she knew how much he loved Lena from the first time he brought her home to meet her. Celeste was suspicious of the girl since she went to church a lot and knew that she regularly went to a frightening shrine. But eventually, she gave up after seeing how possessive Kellen was of his wife and how much he loved her. "Oh, Lena! How could she do this to her own son?" Celeste stooped down and breathed deeply. Her shaky hands gripped the banister for support. Kellen stormed off to his room, leaving his mother in a state of shock. His gaze went straight to what was on a tiny table in the middle of his bedroom. A cake, flowers, and a collage with a lot of images of Lena. Most of the pictures had the bastard stuck to her side, which is what she had been doing all along. What was Ryan attempting to show by delivering these to his house? Kellen let out a painful grunt as he tossed everything off the table. Next, he kicked the table away with all his might. He panted as he looked around the bedroom. Every place had a memory of her. There were framed pictures of the two of them together from previous years on the walls. Her cheerful visage in them now made him feel bad. Kellen was only aware of his knees hitting the floor for a short time. "Why?" his weak voice muttered as the pain echoed in the empty room. "Why did you do this to me?" Kellen was sitting on the chilly floor with his eyes closed, not really aware of what was going on around him. He didn't know how long he had been like this. The sound of his bedroom door banging open brought him back to reality. It was hard for Kellen to find the energy and motivation to get up and find out what was making this noise, but he did it anyhow. And all of a sudden, he had all the energy and determination he needed. His blood boiled when he saw Ryan step in, like a primordial reaction. "How could you believe some freaking pictures of your wife? How could you do this to Lena?" Ryan shouted. Kellen came at Ryan with an angry roar and threw a fist at his face. "Don't you dare open your mouth here and defend that whore," he said, but Ryan hit him in the face before he could finish. Kellen fell back, and before he could get back up, Ryan grabbed his collar and brought his knee up to punch him in the stomach. Ryan exclaimed, "You have no idea how much you will regret it, you freak," as he pushed Kellen back, who fell to the ground. Kellen stood up straight and said, "You would regret it if you stayed another minute in my house." He picked up his phone and called the stupid guard who had let Ryan in. He was going to terminate him right away. Ryan shook his head in astonishment, took a deep breath to calm down, and tried one final time to make Kellen's brain work. "You're making a big mistake, Kellen. Lena and I are not having an affair." "Really?" Kellen remarked with a sour laugh. "Or have you gotten tired of her? Now that she's living with you after being kicked out of my house, do you suddenly realize that the fun is over?" "Please, she's not at my house." "Is that so?" Kellen said right away, making fun of him. Ryan stepped back, his face twisted into a deep frown of anger and anguish. It was clear that Kellen wasn't going to trust whatever he said. The jerk had lost his mind. "Listen to me, Kellen. One day, you will regret everything you did. You will understand what you did. And nothing you do then will be enough to get back what you threw away." Ryan walked out of the home as quickly as he came in, without even looking at the pathetic excuse for a man standing behind him in rigid rage. He made up his mind to find Lena, and he hardened his heart. Ryan sent a silent prayer to the angels as he drove his car onto the street, begging them to keep Lena safe wherever she was at the time. There was only one person in the hospital lobby, an old man with a lot of wrinkles who was sleeping on one of the lined-up chairs in front of the scary metal doors to the operating room. His head was tilted to one side, which made him look uncomfortable. Damien Cole glanced at the guy without really thinking about it. He could feel the sadness of this location settling in, and it may have been the same emotion that many others had experienced here before him, waiting, praying, and worrying about what would happen next. The doctor finally came out in his scrubs, with lines on his forehead. Damien walked right up to him. "Mr. Cole, her condition is very bad. She had a miscarriage, lost a lot of blood," and the doctor paused for a while. Damien took a step forward in worry. For a moment, his eyes flashed to the doors behind which he knew the unknown woman was fighting for her life. And he pushed the doctor to say more. The doctor let out a sigh. "We're not sure yet, but there seems to be something wrong with your wife's blood sample." "What does that mean?" Damien said with a grimace. The doctor said, "We think you might have a disease, but we need to do more tests to be sure. I'm afraid this is a lot more complicated than just a car accident." Damien remarked, "But she'll be okay, right? Mr. Cole, let's just pray and hope for the best." Damien felt the answer sounded quite gloomy and disheartening, and his scowl deepened. He saw the doctor go back behind the doors of the operating room. Damien sighed and ran a hand through his unruly hair before slumping back into the chair behind him. The elderly man was still sleeping, not aware of what was going on around him. He was also snoring after saying something that didn't make sense. Damien barely stared at the guy for a second before turning his attention back to the doors of the operating room. His mind was racing with thoughts of this woman he didn't know anything about, but he had told her he was her husband to make sure there were no delays or legal problems with her treatment. He felt bad about the state he had discovered her in. He blinked and closed his eyes, and behind them, he saw the memory of all the blood in her pale face. He thought about if she had a family or someone who cared about her and could be looking for her. He was upset because he thought about how she would feel when she woke up and heard that she had lost her kid. The doctor was also talking about this sickness. But that's only if she wakes up. Kellen's whole body shook with rage. He never really liked the way Lena and Ryan were friends. He couldn't help but be jealous of how close they were to each other. He never said anything about it, at least not in words, but the feeling of worry never went away. Kellen hated that his wife was so close to this other man who wasn't him. But he never made a big issue out of it, keeping his doubts firmly in check. But now that he has seen the clear proof of the evil thing that has been going on right beneath his nose all this time, he finally lost it. The idea of Ryan caressing Lena in ways that only he had the authority to drove him crazy. Kellen drank a couple more shots, and the liquor burned as it went down his throat. It had been an entire day since Lena departed. With his crushed heart, an entire day felt like an eternity. Every second of being alone and knowing she was cheating on him hurt like deadly thorns all over his body. And he was bleeding deep down. He didn't want to go back to the house where he saw Lena's ghost, no matter which direction he looked. It stung so much to find out that all of the happy memories they had together in that house since their wedding were falsehoods. Her love was a lie. A soft palm covered his rough, trembling fingers, which were holding another shot in its vice grasp. Kellen raised his blood-red eyes to find Selini's frightened gaze looking at him with pity. "Stop, Kellen," Selini said with a sigh. She shook her head, and her long hair fell out of her delicate bun. She didn't appear to know how her hair had gotten free. "You're killing yourself. Forget about her, she's not worth your time. Please don't waste yourself on her. If you think of me as your friend," she said, "you would stop this craziness right now." Kellen drank the harsh drink and slammed the glass down, ignoring her. The loud bass music in the background made his scalp throb in a dull agony, and he could see that things were progressively turning fuzzy in front of him. "I hate her," he said, his eyes streaming. Selini's smooth fingers kept covering his. "You should." She spoke in a soft whisper. She may have said more, but Kellen wasn't paying any attention to what was going on around him anymore. Kellen knew that Selini was holding him up as he walked out of the club on shaky legs. He recalled getting into a car and then going inside a house that wasn't his. He felt the soft sheets on his chilly, exposed flesh and then the warmth of a woman's body moving over him. He welcomed it, it was a wonderful diversion. But as his quick pants of breath finally slowed down, he whispered into her long, silky hair. Lena Selini's hand stroked his ribs till her palm protectively rested above his racing heart. The frown that formed on her lips as she heard Lena's name quickly turned into a confident smile. She moaned and moved in closer to his ear. She assured, "Don't worry, Kellen. I'll make you forget her soon." "Is it still pouring outside?" Lena couldn't open her eyes no matter how hard she tried, but she could hear the sound of pitter-patter against a glass window far away. She could also smell the unique fragrance of dirt that only came out when it rained. It was much like that day in the rear of the shrine, under the cherry blossom tree, when she first noticed him standing in the distance. He seemed so gorgeous that day, handsome and chilly. Kellen. But now it was scary for her to think about why it was so dark around. "Why can't I see?" Then a voice murmured from someplace, "You've lost him." "No, not just him. She's lost everything." A thick, black wave of negativity hit her spirit, and a crushing sadness sank inside. She attempted to hold on to something, anything out of the blackness, but she couldn't reach anything at all. Her whole body jerked. The horrible feeling started to tear her life in half. Her eyelids flickered but never opened, and a tear fell from the corner of her eye. There was a loud, frantic beeping sound throughout the room. Damien sprang up from the couch, where he was about to fall asleep outside the ICU room. He was worried and confused as he watched a number of physicians and nurses go through the glass doors. That's when he saw the woman's corpse, which appeared like it was having a seizure. He could see her face twist in misery through the glass. He closed his eyes and turned away, not being able to see any more. It seemed like fate was set on making this poor woman suffer, no matter who she was. Kellen shoved Selini's hand away as it slowly slid down his chest and into the south. "Selini," he said with a sigh as he moved to the other side of the couch. "You said there was something important you wanted to talk to me about." Selini let out a frustrated sigh. "It's your dad. He wants to talk to you." "About what?" Selini took a moment to think about what to say. "Business, and about us. He read what the tabloids wrote about us last week." Kellen swiped a palm over his face to get rid of the frustration he was feeling. Selini she cut in with a big breath and rose up from the couch, then moved to stand between Kellen's legs. "Why don't you ever stay with me at night, Kellen?" she said in a low voice. "You already took me that night, so why are you so far away now?" Kellen watched as Selini shook off the silk robe she had been wearing. It fell over her shoulder. Her figure was on full show, she was definitely every man's wet fantasy. But the image made Kellen cringe within. In his mind, he started to compare Selini's proud features to Lena's curving ones again. He clenched his teeth because he was unhappy. He added, "Selini, I was drunk that night. We decided to stay friends after that." Selini almost yelled in anger, "I don't understand because you said you needed some time. Why do you still want that cheating piece? Stop being silly." "I'm not missing anyone," Kellen said as he turned aside to straighten his coat. His thoughts shouted that he was a huge giant lie. He yelled out Lena's name in the heat of love that night because he thought of her. And it wasn't like he hadn't tried to get over his unfaithful wife, it wasn't like he hadn't attempted to find something to do with his body when Lena's actual face was revealed. But up until now, he had been doing really poorly. He could only think about Lena, the woman he wanted, and then he would back off every time he attempted to be close to Selini. No matter how hard she tried to change his mind, he didn't like the notion of sleeping with Selini. Because of this, Selini and his business stayed restricted to that one night of drinking. Selini had told Kellen that she wanted to start a relationship with him, but he had asked for some time. And now the media was following them. It was hot and happening, the breaking news that a famous supermodel and a business magnate were having an affair while the business magnate's wife vanished from the picture. He didn't care what people said about him. He was so angry that he was still allowing his cheating, backstabbing wife to dominate him. "Hey, I'm leaving tomorrow. I'll talk to your dad when I get back from Felden." Kellen sprang up when Selini finally backed off a little. "I have to go now, my flight is very early in the morning." He moved across the living area to the front doors, ready to leave her flat. But Selini beckoned him from behind in a panic, though she sounded a little calmer now. Kellen was glad to see her wearing her silk robe again as he looked back. "He's going to Felden on a tour too, you know. Then tell him to call me when he gets there so we can have a meeting or something." Selini probably looked at him. Please call me every day. Kellen nodded yes, and when Selene moved up to him and got on her tiptoes to give him a sweet kiss, he didn't stop her, but he did step back politely as the kiss was going to get more serious. After that, he quickly left her house. He pressed 2 fingers to his temple and climbed into his automobile. The vein under his fingertips throbbed, which meant that a headache was coming on. Jason, who was in charge of his security crew and often drove him about, had gone on a long trip. The moron has been acting sad for no reason for a time now. His strange behavior started the night Lena departed, which is strange. Kellen was so angry that he wanted to terminate the idiot who was probably on the side of that cheating, lying lady. He had just sent him on a long vacation, but he went right away like Kellen had the plague in his house and needed to get away from it as soon as possible. Now, he knew that he hadn't driven his own automobile in a long time. He didn't recruit anyone to take Jason's place, though, either temporarily or permanently. He just wanted to be alone himself as often as he could. He made the mistake of looking up at Selene's apartment window while pushing the car out to the street. He saw her standing behind the glass. The robe had slipped down one of her shoulders, and he could see her. Now show the whole world, hey? He still remembered the nights he had spent with Selene before he took over Zarekerb. They both knew that their relationship would start and finish in bed, which was precisely how he wanted it. Selene pushed him to start dating, and he did, but like all of his prior relationships, he stopped it quickly. Selene was still a wonderful friend, but they were only friends and nothing more. But until Lena came along, it was simple to spend time with her, whether it was in bed or as a friend. But it seemed like it was impossible to get back that way anymore, no matter how hard he tried. After Lena, he was wrecked. Lena! 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 He was so angry with himself that he smacked the steering wheel hard, which made the car slip a bit out of control and shriek when he clutched the wheel again. How long would it take for him to get her out of his brain and heart? Felden. The city was really gloomy right now since the sky was cloudy and there was no moon. As always, Lena had an indifferent evening. She leaned against the window frame and stared out at the darkening sky. She felt the same way inside. She could feel herself fading away in the thick, dark stuff of never-ending anguish that now covered much of her heart. She jumped as a warm hand brushed her cheek, and only then did she realize she had been sobbing. Damien frowned and walked up to Lena. "What is this?" he said. "You're crying again. It's not worth it to cry over your husband, who is a fool, and refusing to get back up again won't bring back what you've lost." Lena turned away from Damien, muffling a sob and looking for something she couldn't see in the dark. "You're right, Damien. There's nothing that can bring back what we've lost." Damien had never lost a kid before, but from where he was now, seeing Lena's pain when she woke up in the hospital, he could tell that it was definitely worse than being choked to death. He saw her getting more and more depressed every day for months. He was the one who stood by her bed and listened to her cry for death in a fit of rage. But he was glad to see her calm down after a few days. He loved to think that his friendship might help her get out of the deepest pit. He was on the edge of his seat, hoping that she would discover something in that place that would help her get her act together and move on from the past. "You need to move on," he said, putting a soothing hand on her shoulder. I know you can't forget the past or let go of everything that happened, but don't let it destroy you. Don't destroy yourself, Lena. Sometimes, Lena let out a weak breath, and her chest hurt as it always did. Sometimes I think it would have been better if you hadn't saved me. I would have been with my child somewhere, and it wouldn't hurt like this. She held her heart over her shawl, which was thick wool that hid her thin frame and pale skin. The deep, scarlet color of the fabric made her neck stand out. When she said it, Damien felt his chest clench. And for the millionth time, he wanted to meet her spouse so he could kill him with his bare hands. But no matter how he felt inside, he always kept it all up for Lena's sake. But Lena, I don't get it. How could it have been better for my store? He said to lighten the mood. After all, my stores are doing great now that I saved you and made you my business partner. He sighed loudly when she didn't even smile. Oh, man. At least pretend to smile, he said. Your jokes are as sad as you are, Damien, she said, sniffling. After hearing Lena say one night that she used to write and that writing was one of the things she loved most, he looked over the notebook he had given her months before. He thought that writing would help her get over what she had been through, so he hurried to a store and purchased her a nice notebook and a pen right away. Sadly, it stayed empty for days until one day, she eventually took up the pen. He opened the journal quietly on a cloudy morning. But after reading the one page she had written in her beautiful handwriting, he didn't know if he should be happy that she was finally doing what she loved or cry because the words showed how much pain she was in. Damien held Lena and breathed out, hoping to take some of her agony away. Your baby would hate to see you crying like this, no matter where they are right now. I know. Lena shook in his arms, and her throat felt like it was closing up. Damien could see she was getting herself together by the way her shoulders straightened and the long, quivering breath she took. She was suppressing all the agony and battling them until she was too tired to resist any more. The open window let in a very chilly wind that made her shudder. The wind made her hair dance, which showed a deep scar. It started at the edge of her jaw and made a long line that went down her neck and vanished. This scar was one of the things that reminded her of that night. There were a lot more of them, but they were buried deep in her heart, still bleeding, still suffering, and very much permanent. Kellen didn't get stiff with worry on his journey back to his flat because the road was congested or because his flight was delayed and his first appointment with the possible purchasers was pushed back. It was how he felt in his chest. The instant he stepped out of the airport and into this little but beautiful city, the breeze around him seemed filled with power. Felden. He could only think of the one person he didn't want to when he looked at the city's splendor. Lena. She loved nature and would have liked to relax by the various lakes and parks he saw while traveling. His hands tightened. A memory came before his eyes, Lena in the passenger seat with a calm grin on her lips, one of her hands stretched out the rolled-down window. She had closed her eyes for a minute as if attempting to take in the moment's essence. She looked so heavenly. He was enchanted by her. Kellen grumbled and shook his head. He was thinking about her again, but the memory faded, and bitter ones took its place. He quickly pulled up his window and chased her away. He chanted over and over in his head like a bleeding spell, reminding himself of how terrible she was, how she had cheated on him, and how she had betrayed him. So far, it has just made him more angry. Every day, this pain inside him would only get worse and worse. The goal of forgetting her was nothing near being reached. Standing against a tsunami and yet being alive is like forgetting love. Kellen felt like he was on fire, and nothing could stop this hellfire inside him until he was dead. His phone rang out of the blue, waking him up from the black depths of his imagination. He raked one hand through his hair in annoyance after quickly looking at the name on the screen. He was trying to forget someone, but this woman kept contacting him all the time, which made him quite angry. It was hard to deal with Selene's moaning and nagging while trying to be friends with her. At first, he thought Selene would help him forget Lena. But he always ended up comparing the two when he was with her. And now, after that one night of drinking and being stupid with her, the tabloids were following his love life, and her father wanted to see him for some reason. Kellen was just 1 inch away from doing something really bad. He didn't even worry about what would happen as a result of those dramatic acts these days. He had lost his mind and didn't care anymore. It may be because he felt dead within every second. He knew he was colder than he had been before Lena. It was nearly too much to handle. He was used to being hurt by the games and lies of everyone around him. But Lena made that pain too much to bear. He should have known better. She had blinded him with her kindness, hopes, aspirations, and brightness, but he should have realized that no one in the real world was so innocent. There was gloom in everyone. His parents had, as they cheated on each other and split up not long after. Lena was the same. Finally, it was proven. And with that, the single thing that made him happy was suddenly gone. He loathed everything and everyone in his life at that point. He was like a black hole, and all the hate and pain took over his life. Lena scooped up the complete pile by folding the next cardigan and placing it on top of the others. Now, it was so big that it blocked most of her vision, making it hard for her to see where she was going. Lena didn't really mind that, though. She was quite familiar with every part of the store. She could even go around here and perform all the jobs without looking. But there was only one thing that made it hard for her to stroll about without seeing: the angry shop manager, Lola. Lola, the human bulldozer, was the most clumsy person ever. Lena screamed in amazement, ah, when Lola dashed into her out of nowhere. All of the cardigans she was holding flew away in separate directions. Lola was also screaming as they both fell into a rack, and the handbags that were on it fell down around them and hit them on the heads. "What, Lola?" Lena said as she pushed herself up to sit up. Lola probably was struck too severely. She sat up next to Lena on the tiled floor and groaned in pain. "Oh, Lena, I think that new purse is made of rock." Lena rolled her eyes. She couldn't help but smile. "I would have told you to be careful where you were going," she remarked, rising up and looking about at the chaos of cardigans and handbags on the floor. "But since I've already told you that a few hundred times, I would just ignore the whole thing." After moaning some more, Lola sighed and climbed in to help Lena gather everything up and put it back in its proper place. "I have this gut feeling, Lena, that someone put a voodoo spell on me. Otherwise, why do I keep tripping over things, running into people, and making things fly around? Do you get what I'm saying?" Lena grinned and rolled her eyes again. These two were still there, even though all the other personnel had gone home for the night. Lena, who was the manager and business partner, and Lola, who was the shop manager, nearly always had to remain late to close the store. Lena and Lola were walking out of the front gates an hour after the account had already closed. They had put everything back in its place. They stopped in their tracks as they saw Damien sprinting towards them with a big smile. "Hey, girls," he said with a grin on his face that made it look like he was eating garbage. Lena and Lola both raised their eyebrows at it. "Wow! Did you win the lottery or get one of those coupons that let people go to Honolulu for 2 holidays?" Lola said with a laugh. Damien's face wrinkled up. "No, but it's something very similar." Lena's face quickly lit up when she saw how happy Damien was. "Ahoy! And what is that?" she said. Damien gave a wink. "For now, I'd just like to celebrate it with you two over a gallon of ice cream and tell you all about it when the deal is done." "So this is a new deal?" Lena chuckled when Damien nearly pulled the two women by their arms to his car on the curb in excitement. "The biggest one in the short history of my business. If the meeting tomorrow goes well, I will buy from them. And no, I'm not going to tell you the name of the company. I want to see the surprise on your pretty faces and laugh at that," Damien said as he unlocked his car. Lena silently asked God to give Damien everything he sought. He saved her in more than one way. He had been a buddy she could count on no matter what. Lena was shocked at how enormous and loving his heart was. These days, it was hard to find someone like this, and she was glad she met him. Damien, Lola, and a few other people like them made Lena believe in the pleasure and goodness of the world, even while it was full of anguish and pain. Because the gods knew she needed them more than the air she breathed. Even though her heart was crushed, it was still soaking up the brightness that came from these precious gems in her life. Lena strolled in wearing a white blouse and a long satin skirt that was comfy. She could see it was a busy day. It looked like everyone in the city was shopping. In any case, that was excellent for business. Damien's smart style of handling his small firm was truly amazing, and Lena knew that this person would soon be at the head of this queue. His kind personality, compassionate heart, and logical intellect were the keys to his success. Even though the staff was busy with customers, they all looked at Lena and smiled or said hi. Lena grinned and let out a sigh. She treated them like family now that they were hers. And it seemed like all of her hard work was being rewarded with a lot of love as well. She had lost a lot in life, but now she had so much more. She felt like a new person now, except for the nights when she was alone. Thanks to Damien. Lola pushed her way into the little office at the rear of the store, which had 3 desks crammed into a tight area. Lena, Lola, and Damien could use it any time they required it for work. Damien has plans to add more room and build separate cottages shortly. "Lena!" Lola screamed. Lena looked up from the desk with a perplexed smile after putting her tote bag there. Lola was a total drama queen. "What is it now?" she inquired in a calm voice. "Where the heck is your phone?" Lena said, "In my bag." "Why?" Lola rolled her eyes. "Damien wants you to check it," said Lola. Lena didn't see that Lola had her own phone in her now raised hand until Lola pointed it out. And by the looks of it, Damien was on the phone and presumably not in a good mood. Lena arched an eyebrow, but then she unlocked the zipper on her bag and pulled out her phone and a bunch of other items. Seeing 13 missed calls from Damien made her gasp. Selene gave Lena her phone without saying a word but with a smug smirk. Lena bit her lip, took the phone, and pushed it to her ear. She then put her own phone down on the desk. Lena said, "My phone has been vibrating. By accident." Damien said from the other side, "I've been worried sick, Lena." Then he remarked in a calmer voice, "I thought something had happened to you. You were worried for no reason." Damien snorted, "No reason." Damien stopped and groaned after a minute. "What about when you passed out in front of your apartment? Or when you had a bad headache and blanked out and sat like a statue next to a trash can for 4 hours? Or the time on the street when, at this rate, Lena, you'll have to move back into my flat. I know you want to be independent, but this is for your own good." There were moments when she didn't understand why Damien was so worried about her. Kellen did, too, but then his envy and lack of trust took over. Lena shook her head angrily. No. She wasn't going to go back there. Her pain was about to hit her in the dark of night. Not just now, not when she could get all the sunlight she needed from the days she could. "Damien," she murmured in a calm voice. "If something were to happen to me, like death or whatever, it could have happened by now already. You know that, don't you?" "I'm still alive and running fine," she said with a smirk. But not her child. How could she still be alive and that innocent young soul who she never got to know would not be? Damien yelled, "I'm freaking serious. I'm coming over there, and we're going to talk about this." Lena let out a frustrated groan. "No, we're not. Damien, you need to get ready for your meeting with that new company whose name you wouldn't even tell me." Damien answered, "That's because I want to surprise you girls." "Are you changing the subject, you smartass?" Lena grinned. "See you later, Damien." Damien let out a sigh of defeat. "Just keep the ringtone going, okay? I can't afford to lose my manager and partner at this point in my career," he said. Lena glanced around after hanging up the phone and stumbled back in disbelief. Lola stood right in front of her, frowning like a ghost out for revenge. Lena gasped and held her heart. "Lola! Are you trying to kill me?" Lola waved some papers in front of Lena's face. Lola said, "If I show this to Damien, he'll have a heart attack and rip all your hair off. Your doctor has an appointment with you tonight. You have to go through these strange tests where they'll rip your body apart, and you didn't even think to tell anyone." Lena's face became white. "You're not going to tell Damien because he's going to the meeting. And no one is going to rip my body apart. These are just tests, some regular ones the doctor wants to run on me, and not surgery or anything. So please calm down. But Damien will kill everyone with a saw blade when he finds out you hid it from him. If he finds out I had anything to do with this horrible plot, he'll choke me to death with one of the new cashmere scarves." Lola really understood how to make everything sound worse than it was. "I'll take care of him, Lola, and he won't know you were involved in this plot," Lena said, trying to hide the smile that was wanting to burst out on her lips. "Cross your heart," Lola said quite seriously. Lena was confused, but Lola wouldn't take no for an answer. Lena promised to keep her word, and Lola started to depart. But then she turned around and poked Lena in the collarbone with her finger, making her flinch. "I'm going with you," she said. "You need to hold my hand when they rip you apart." Lola exited, and Lena sat down in the chair behind her desk. What would she have done without these two buddies who are impossible? She smiled and opened the first file from the stack of papers and folders. She threw herself into her job and forgot about the knots in her mind where sad thoughts were stuck. Like usual, the pounding pain in her head told her it was there. Thank goodness she was getting very good at ignoring it these days. It took 3 lengthy hours to finish all of the tests. Lena and Lola ended up waiting for their examinations in different parts of the hospital. And at the end, Lena really felt like she was ripped apart from head to toe. Lola was correct. The reports were to be picked up 3 days later, as there was a weekend in between. Lola told Lena on the way out of the hospital that Damien would want to come along to get the reports and ask the doctor. "I bet he would," Lena said. Damien called her when they were walking down the corridor. He could tell when people were talking about him. Telepathy. Lena answered the phone after asking Lola to grab the car from the parking lot and gave her the keys. Damien shouted, "Lena," and she flinched. She grinned since she had never heard him that excited before. "The deal's done. I've got that wrapped around my finger. Just wait and see, our business is going to the top now." Lena smiled. "Congratulations, Damien. I'm so happy for you." "This means," Damien said, "I'm taking you girls out to dinner." "Where are you? I can hear noises, so you're not home." Lena sighed in her mind. She didn't want to lie to him, but he was so joyful that he would start to worry if she told him about the tests. But she wouldn't lie to Damien. Actually, Damien, she was about to tell him right now, but someone shoved him rather hard on the shoulder as they walked past. "Ah, hey," Lena exclaimed as her body involuntarily turned around, and her phone tumbled on the floor. She saw the battery pop out and hoped the gadget would operate. She had saved up some money and bought the phone last month. "Where are your freaking eyes?" Lena picked up her phone and the battery that had come loose from it and straightened up from her knees. When she saw the face of the person she had bumped into, her words died off. She was shocked all over. Memories sprang to the front of her thoughts. "Ryan," she said in surprise. "When we least expect it, the past has strange ways of coming back to us. It's like a shadow that follows us around." "Ryan," Lena stammered in amazement. The memories of that night came flooding back to her, waking up from the part of her mind where they had been hidden and causing so much anguish. She remembered everything Ryan had said on the phone that night. His treachery was one of many scars that she would never be able to forget. Ryan's face showed a lot of different feelings. He was thrilled to see his buddy after a long time, but at the same time, he felt bad for her and thought about all the things she could have gone through. "God!" Ryan said, his voice full of passion as if a ball of it had been stuck in his throat forever. "Lena! You! Oh my God, Lena!" he said, holding her cheek in both happiness and anxiety. Lena was pulled back into the present when she heard his words. She fired back, pushing his hand away and getting ready to go, but Ryan quickly seized her wrist. He could finally relax now that his quest was done. He had located her closest friend. "Where were you, Lena," he said with a grin of relief on his lips. "I looked for you everywhere. Are you okay? Where are you going to sleep?" He had just started, and there were a lot of questions. But most of them got answered automatically as he looked into her eyes. Those soulful eyes had lost their lives in them and had dark circles around them. Her pale face and weight loss screamed that she was not fine. She looked broken but still somehow hanging on by a thread. Lena chuckled in a cynical way, and her voice was so frigid that it sent chills down my spine. "Ryan's heart hurt a lot. After what you've done to me, you want an answer?" Lena hissed. Ryan shook his head angrily. "Lena, don't!" she interrupted, her voice breaking with sorrow. "It's still hard for me to understand that my closest friend wrecked me. You turned me into a harlot in his eyes with just a few changed pictures. Ryan, this was so easy." "Well, congratulations on that." Lena broke up, and tears streamed down her cheeks. "How could you? Ryan, how could you go so low?" "I didn't." Ryan clenched his teeth and clenched his fists in despair. "Trust me, Lena. That night, you just heard bits and pieces, and it's evident that you got it wrong. Lena, I had nothing to do with the pictures. You have to believe me on this." "Maybe you're correct." "Maybe," Lena said between tears. "But how would that change what has already happened?" It was easy to hear the truth in his speech and see it in his eyes, but so much had already been lost that the truth didn't matter anymore. Ryan's eyes were filling with tears as he saw Lena in such a weak state. He wanted his buddy back and prayed she wasn't lost to him. Ryan grasped Lena's shoulders in another frantic attempt to calm her down. "I know you've been through a lot, but we can show that you prove." That made Lena lose it, and she pushed Ryan away hard. "Can't you see it doesn't matter to me anymore? Nothing can bring back my child who has died. Nothing." She laughed bitterly as she took another step back and saw Ryan freeze in place. Now the dam had broken. Lena couldn't stop. "According to Kellen, it was your bastard. My little one." She felt the same way she had months ago, in that hospital bed, when Damien told her the horrible news that her baby was dead. She had played there on the bed then because the drugs in her system made her unable to even thrash with the horrible sobs that came from her soul. Ryan was still terrified. He felt like all of his ideas, intellect, and feelings had been taken away. Ryan and Lena were so upset that they didn't hear the sound of a can screeching to a stop near them. They also missed the door slamming open and closed. It wasn't until Lola's fist hit Ryan's jaw that he snapped out of his traumatic state. Ryan's eyes were blurry with pain as he cupped his jaw and looked up at Lola, who was yelling cuss words, and quickly got Lena almost up her waist and into the car. Ryan remained there, unable to do anything as the automobile sped away. "I will prove that we are both innocent, Lena. I'll get back at the people who hurt you by hurting them. Kellen will regret the day he was born. I promise, Lena. I promise. I assumed he did something bad to you, like molest you or take you hostage. You're telling me now that he was the best friend who you thought had framed you until this day?" Lola exclaimed in frustration. "What if he truly set you up?" Lena was putting a bandage on Lola's injured knuckles with a blank expression. "He wasn't lying, I would have known if he had," Lena said simply. How could she not read her best friend's eyes? If she couldn't, she would be a hypocrite, just like Kellen. Lola rolled her eyes and didn't look at her broken hand. It ached. The man had a really obstinate jaw. She hoped it cracked after she hit him, even if Lena said he was innocent. Lena was just the kind of person who saw the good in everyone. Then who really framed you if that Ryan man is innocent? Lola said in a confused voice. Lena rubbed her temples and winced. She could feel another one of those killer headaches coming on, the ones that made her faint and left her with a bloody nose last night. She made sure that no one but her doctor knew about that. She didn't want to worry Damien and Lola more. And suddenly, Damien burst into her room and shouted, "Lena!" He yelled, and both Lena and Lola jumped in surprise. Lola hit her hurt hand on the chair and yelled a curse at Damien. He didn't even look at her. Damien ran up to Lena and stopped in front of her with an angry look on his face. "Tell me, why didn't I know about your hospital tests?" After that, he looked closely at Lena's face, and his wrath went away. "Why do you look like you cried?" he screamed. He saw Lola's hand wrapped in a bandage and pointed at it. He cried even louder out of fear, "And why is your hand bandaged? What's happening?" Lena jumped to stop Lola from jumping on Damien and raising her good hand to hit him again. "You silly person, ask one question at a time." Lena felt like she could breathe again. The weight on her shoulders slowly lifted as her thoughts and heart turned to her wacky friends in the present. She smiled and sighed softly, wondering where she would have been without these two. Kellen sat in the dark, drinking himself into a stupor with the several bottles of scotch and whiskey he owned. The light in his room was out, but the window was open. The little bit of light seeping in from outside pained his eyes. It was almost dawn, and he still couldn't sleep, even though he had drunk a lot. The pain in his chest was still throbbing, and he could almost feel himself withering away. Maybe then he would finally be free. This life full of memories of her love and betrayal was killing him from the inside out. His phone rang again. Kellen didn't need to look at it to know it was Selene. All he wanted to do was sleep or, better yet, pass out from all the alcohol. But that woman kept telling him how much she loved him. It had gotten worse since he got to Felden. Selene was going crazy. He had stopped answering her calls, and it seemed like it was time to. Kellen grabbed his phone from the table in front of him and flung it at the wall farthest away with a snarl of rage. At last, everything was silent. What a relief! Lena felt like she was at the very center of heaven. Children were like heaven on earth. She smiled as she watched the kids play in front of her. Some were toddlers, and some were older but still very cute. A group of them rushed by her with a ball, and their innocent smiles and screams filled the ache in her heart. She was in the playground of Gwen's home for the unfortunate children, as she was every Sunday evening. It was close to the boutique, just a block away, next to a beautiful lake. During her beginning days when she joined Damien's boutique to restart her life, it didn't take her long to discover this ethereal place close by. Since then, she has become a permanent face around the children every weekend and sometimes more than weekends. Gwen's home became her solace, for she found her own child that she could not see among these children. Sometimes, she took a toddler to sit on her lap and showered them with kisses and affection that she would have given to her own. She still remembers how the first day the kids tackled her on the ground and hugged her fiercely when she brought them snacks and gifts. She cried right then and there. If anyone can find heaven on earth, it can only be through the open, innocent, and trusting hearts of children. And she found hers. It took her a while to get her emotions under control so she wouldn't cry every time she came here. She couldn't offer them a lot of money since her finances weren't great, but she did her best. The kids wanted more than money, they wanted love, and she could give them a lot of it. Lena turned to see a pleasant, wrinkled face next to her on the mat. "He's a newbie here," Gwen said with a smile as she looked down at the little one in her arms. "He's about 5 months old." When Lena saw the baby, her heart leaped. She extended her arms, and Gwen put the child in them. When Lena lay the kid's head on her chest, she sighed. A grin spread over her lips as the warmth filled her spirit. "How did we locate this sweet little one?" she asked in a quiet voice, running her finger gently over the boy's cheek, which was covered in saliva. Gwen let out a long sigh of tiredness, and the lines on her forehead got deeper. "One of our junior sisters found him in the trash. She was walking through the ghetto district of West Felden." Join our Facebook and WhatsApp group for more updates, link is given in description. Rest audiobook will be continued in next episode.